Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vatican and World News.
In the headlines this Sunday, November the 30th, Pope Leo XIV wraps up the Turkish leg of his apostolic visit and kicks off the Lebanese leg with a meeting with authorities. In the morning, the Pope prays at the Armenian Apostolic Cathedral and attends the Divine Liturgy in Istanbul before taking off from Turkey. But first, Pope Leo chats with journalists aboard the papal plane. In the Vatican, I'm Linda Bordoni. Pope Leo XIV on Sunday afternoon landed at Beirut Airport, kicking off the second leg of his first apostolic journey abroad, taking him to Turkey and Lebanon. He greeted the some 80 journalists on board the papal plane and answered some questions pertaining to his time spent in Turkey. But first he thanked those accompanying him and looked back to the past 4 days.
As you know, the primary reason for coming to Turkey was the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea. And we had that magnificent celebration, very simple and yet very profound, on the site of one of the ancient basilicas of Nicaea to commemorate that great event of the agreement of the whole Christian community on the profession of faith, the Nicene-Constantinopolitan Creed. So it was, I think, a great success. I was very happy to have the different moments we had in the different churches with the different Christian communities of the Orthodox churches, culminating this morning with the Divine Liturgy with Patriarch Bartolomeo. So it was a wonderful celebration.
At the beginning, your papal trip, you made references to world and regional peace. What is your comment? Turkey's role in achieving and maintaining world and regional peace?
To have come to Turkey and, of course, now to Lebanon on this trip, there was, of course, a special theme of, if you will, being a messenger of peace, of wanting to promote peace throughout the region. Turkey has a number of, if you will, qualities about it. It's a country of the vast majority being Muslims, and yet the presence of numerous Christian communities there, although a very small minority, and yet people of different religions are able to live in peace. And that is one example, I would say, of, I think, what we all would be looking for throughout the world, to say that in spite of religious differences, in spite of ethnic differences, in spite of many other differences, people can indeed live in peace. To have experienced that and to have been able to speak also with President Erdogan about peace, I think was an important element, a worthwhile element of my visit there.
And that was Pope Leo XIV speaking to journalists on board the papal plane taking him to Beirut. And as he himself mentioned there, Pope Leo prayed on Sunday morning at the Armenian Apostolic Cathedral in Istanbul, the first event of his last day in Turkey. The Pope thanked God for the courageous witness offered by Armenians throughout history, often amid tragic circumstances. Devon Watkins has more.
Pope Leo XIV began the fourth and final day of his apostolic journey to Turkey with prayer at the Armenian Apostolic Cathedral in Istanbul. In his address, the Pope thanked God for the courageous Christian witness of the Armenian people throughout history, often amid tragic circumstances. He also expressed his gratitude for the growing fraternal bonds that unite the Apostolic Armenian Church and the Catholic Church. He pointed to the first joint declaration of a pope with an Oriental Orthodox patriarch in May 1970, saying a dialogue of charity between the two churches has flourished. Pope Leo said his visit to Turkey celebrates the Nicene Creed as the Church marks the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea.
We must draw from this shared apostolic faith in order to recover the unity that existed in the early centuries between the Church of Rome and the ancient Oriental churches.
Pope Leo pointed to the 12th century Armenian Catholicos St. Nearsis IV Shnorhali and his tireless work to reconcile the churches in order to fulfill Christ's prayer that all may be one. He He prayed that the example of St. Narcissus may inspire us and his prayer strengthen all Christians on the path to full communion.
May we receive this gift from above with open hearts, so that we may be ever more convincing witnesses to the truth of the gospel and better servants of the mission of the one Church of Christ.
In conclusion, Pope Leo XIV thanked Armenian Patriarch Sahak II for his warm welcome. I'm Devin Watkins.
And also on Sunday morning in Istanbul, Pope Leo attended the Divine Liturgy at the Patriarchal Church of St. George at the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Invited by Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, both leaders underscored the bonds that unite Orthodox and Catholics and the duty to persevere forward with efforts aimed at full Christian unity. Following the Divine Liturgy, they both gave their ecumenical blessing to all gathered. Thaddeus Jones tells us more.
Over 400 members of the Holy Synod of the Ecumenical Patriarchate and members of the Episcopate made up the congregation at the Divine Liturgy on this day, celebrating the patronal feast of the Apostle Andrew. Pope Leo, in his address delivered at the celebration, remarked how this pilgrimage together to the places where the first ecumenical council in the history of the Church took place in Nicaea culminates in this solemn Divine Liturgy together.
During this ecumenical prayer, together with the heads of churches and representatives of Christian world communities, we have recalled that the faith professed in the Nicene Constantinopolitan Creed unites us in real communion and allows us to recognize each other as brothers and sisters.
The Pope went on to say, and despite the many misunderstandings and even conflicts of the past and challenges of the present in achieving full communion, we must continue to strive towards unity and continue to consider each other as brothers and sisters in Christ and to love one another accordingly. The Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew, in his homily for the Divine Liturgy, offered words of joy for this day on which the Church celebrates the feast of St. Andrew, and he gave warm words of welcome to Pope Leo, successor of St. Peter, for his fraternal visit.
As successors of the two holy apostles, the founders of our respective churches, we feel bound by ties of spiritual brotherhood, which obligate us to work diligently to proclaim the message of salvation to the world.
Your All Holiness, with these heartfelt thoughts, I offer you and your brothers and sisters my most fervent wishes for good health and serenity as you celebrate the feast of your patron saint.
And following Pope Leo during his apostolic visit to Turkey, our correspondent Christopher Wells in Istanbul looks back at some of the salient moments of the Pope's visit.
Pope Leo traveled to Turkey not only to make a pastoral visit to the nation's small but vibrant Catholic community, but especially to commemorate the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea. Friday's visit to the site of the council in modern-day Iznik was one of the high points of the visit, with Pope Leo joined by the Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew I and more than 20 patriarchs and heads of churches and Christian communions representing the vast majority of Christians throughout the world. There is a definite ecumenical focus to the journey, with stops at Syriac Orthodox and Armenian Apostolic churches, as well as a visit to the Ecumenical Patriarchate, where Pope Leo and Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew signed a joint statement on the feast of St. Andrew, the traditional founder of the See of Constantinople. The Pope began his journey with a visit to the mausoleum of the founder and first president of the Republic of Turkey, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, and with meetings with civil and political leaders, including Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Pope Leo's first apostolic journey also included an encounter with Turkey's chief Islamic leaders and a visit to the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, as well as a private encounter with the chief rabbi of Turkey's Jewish community. In Istanbul, I'm Christopher Wells.
And during his days in Istanbul, Christopher Wells had the opportunity to speak to the Armenian Apostolic Patriarch of Constantinople, Sahak II Marshalian. The Patriarch expressed his belief that Christian churches need to find new ways to think about and model a new pattern of ecumenism. He also talked about the significance of the anniversary of the First Ecumenical Council for the Armenian Church and for ecumenical relations.
You know, the world is becoming one and united in everywhere, globalism. So unity and singularity is a fact. In this case, it is impossible that the Church of Christ must be united and must speak about singularity of faith. In fact, it happened 1,700 years ago at the First Council of Nicaea, and so the Christians could voice about their faith as one voice, and it is important. It is a very important reference point for us, for unity. Since it happened and it lasted, the effects of the Council of Nicaea never disappeared. It is a living fact among Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant churches. Therefore, it is a uniting point, as practically also. Therefore, this anniversary may be an opportunity to fire that understanding and getting a better understanding and collaboration of unity. In a sense, I think it is an inspiring point. And it is important that we emphasize, all the churches, the importance of this anniversary, and His Holiness' presence here, in that sense, in Nicaea, I think will be a turning point.
And that was the Armenian Apostolic Patriarch of Constantinople, Sahak II, speaking there to Christopher Wells. And looking ahead, upon his arrival in Beirut on Sunday, the Pope held his customary meetings with the President of the Republic and other political authorities before addressing political leaders, representatives of civil society and members of the diplomatic corps. He has a busy day on Monday, the 1st of December, beginning with a visit to the tomb of Saint Charbel Makhlouf at the monastery of Saint Maroun in Ananya. From there, he travels to the shrine of Our Lady of Lebanon in Harissa, where he will meet with bishops, priests, consecrated persons and pastoral workers. In the afternoon, Pope Leo will hold an ecumenical and interreligious meeting in Martyrs Square in Beirut and then meet with young people. His final day is Tuesday, during which he will visit a hospital, hold Mass on the Beirut waterfront and meet with those affected by the Beirut port explosion. He's scheduled to depart from Beirut on Tuesday afternoon. And that's all for this edition of Vatican and World News. Carry on following us on all of our platforms. Thanks to Alberto Giovanetti in studio in the Vatican. I'm Linda Bodoni. Bye-bye.